Hello everyone and welcome to this 486 Build of Video 2022 edition. I guess most of you know that there is this 486 build of going on currently in the retro community, and I think we had another one last year where I just participated by posting some pictures of my very first computer that I got when I was a kid, and it was a 486 actually. But this year I decided to take another try doing a video recording. It's the first one I'm doing since the Athlon XP Socket A build off. And yeah, so this time I tried to build a system from scratch with some of the components that I have lying around. So you can see my selection here in the picture. Let's have a closer look at these components. So the mainboard, as you can see, is a rather late 486 mainboard, as it already comes with PCI slots. It's using the ALI chipsets, the M1489, sorry, and the M1487. I have this one in my first computer that I just mentioned as well. There is an 8-bit PP4 mainboard inside. This one, I'm not really sure how this is called. I think it goes by the name SMT Terminator 2, at least that's what also the BIOS setting is saying. But I did not really find any real documentation about this board. There's a fun story about how I got my hands on this. I actually once saw an advertisement here in the local marketplace from, I'm pretty sure the guy was a recycler, and he was selling hard drives, old hard drives, so everything up to 2 gigs of memory. And so I contacted him. I wanted to buy some of the drives, and then he made me an offer to buy all the drives. I think it was like 30 or 40. And I think he wanted like 1 or 2 euros per drive. So I decided, okay, I would just take them all, and pretty sure some will be broken, so I have some spare. And when I never tried to negotiate about the price with him, I had the feeling that he was thinking that he's onto something, and he started to offer me some other stuff. And he was offering me mainboards. He sent me a picture of 4 boards, all pretty much like this. And yeah, I think I got this for like 25 euros at the time. And the funny thing is, after he was done with me, I'm pretty sure he wondered why I never tried to negotiate the price in any way, because even at that time 25 euros for such a mainboard was dirt cheap. And then he started to sell other stuff on eBay, but he did not really know what he was selling, and I could see that he quite soon got a bad reputation and stopped selling stuff. So but nevertheless, I was quite happy about this board because it's working totally fine. There is no issue with it. And also, yeah, so what is there to say about it? It has the 256 kilobytes of cache memory sitting here on top. What's funny to mention is that because of the way it's built, there is actually a hole to mount it to the case in the socket here itself. So that's one that you can easily miss when you put the system together. The downside of this board is it's complicated as hell to configure. When I got it, I did not find any information on the internet, like I mentioned, and I did also not find any information on how to jumper it. And as you can see here, there is quite a bunch of jumpers, and most of them are like have 6 pins that you can configure. The only thing that is clearly marked here is the voltage configuration. Let's see if I can make that. I guess the lighting is not helping. So you can see here there's 5 volts, there is 3.4 or 3.3. So there are some options here that are clearly marked, but for everything like frontside bus or multiplier, there's nothing obvious at all. So at some point I got lucky because someone was selling this board on eBay as new, and he was also posting pictures of the manual that he was still having. So I mean, that board went for like, I think 125 euros was at least one auction that I saw. But I downloaded all the pictures that he posted, and one of them was this nice sheet here. That's it's German, unfortunately, for you guys. That's saying Express Configuration. And it has this wonderful table here where you can see all the different CPUs and how to set the jumpers. And you can also see here what I mean by it's crazy hard to configure, because even the jumpers, they are not like numbered in any pattern. You have here jumper 11, and below there's jumper 21, 27, 19, 5, 14, 12, 17. So even with this table here, you see all here the jumper numbers. You're constantly searching for it, and getting one of those right in the middle out to put it somewhere else is like a pure pain. So I have this board configured for this CPU now, and I'm pretty sure it will stay like that for a long time now, because it's working in this combination, and I don't want to rearrange those jumpers as again. I think I even broke one when I tried to pull it out. And there are some jumpers here up here as well that are also important, and here are some, and there. So that's definitely room for improvement. But besides that, it's a really nice board, and yeah, I do like it. It works good. In terms of CPU, I originally wanted to use one of these. I recently got my hand on this ST CPU, the DX280. Unfortunately, that board is not working well with that CPU. I know that this CPU is working, but the board, even though in this table there's this CPU is mentioned and how to configure it, it's not starting up. I tested with a logic analyzer card, and it was always stuck at the state that is, according to the manual, saying Cyrix CPU initialization. So I tried a couple of times to get this working with different combinations. I even tried to configure it to AMD DX280, but it just did not boot up. So that's very unfortunate. I would really have liked to try the CPU out on this board, but I guess I have to do this with another system at another point. So instead I went with this DX4100. I was considering going with a DX266, as by many people this is seen as a D486 CPU, but yeah, I kind of like the idea to have a little bit more headroom for some games with the DX4100, so I went and go ahead with this one. And as far as I can tell, it's working quite well, and all the games that I usually used to play, they are supported, so that's nice as well. Alright, extension cards. I'm pretty sure this card is overkill for a 486 system. This is a Matrox Millennium 1 card with 4 megabytes of VGA memory, actually. But I had this card lying around, and Matrox is known to have quite a good VGA signal, and so I decided to use this one, knowing that 4 megabytes is way too much for a DOS system, but I wanted to do something else than the usual S3 card that works and has no issues, so I just wanted to use a different kind of hardware this time for this build. Yes, so, and finally the Soundcard, and this is a card I really came to love a lot. So this is the TerraTech. I'm not even sure how this is spelled. So since TerraTech was a German company, I would tend to pronounce this Maestro, but it could as well be Maestro. I have no idea. But this card is really sounding very, very great. It has the Dream synthesizer chip, the SAM9233. That is, I mean, it's not exactly this one, but the Dream chips have been used on the EWS64 cards. They are used on the Dream Blaster wavetable daughter boards, and they really do have a nice sound. What I do like about this card comes with 2 megabytes of memory pre-installed, so there is no way to upload any sound font like you can do on the later cards, the EWS64. But what you can do, or what is inside, is as far as the rumor goes, an original Roland sound font that pretty much sounds like an SC55. Now you can do all this with the EWS64 card as well, but what I do like about this card is that it's so plain simple to use. You just plug it in, you initialize the card on startup, you have a nice mixer tool to use, and it just sounds great. For the EWS cards, you have to find the right sound fonts, you have to upload it each time when the system starts. I did not try it, but I think I heard somewhere that, or read somewhere that it can take up a while on a slow 46 system to load the fonts into the cards. And even then, you need to come up with some settings for the effects so that it sounds nice. I think on Vogons there is somewhere a mixer configuration that puts the right amount of reverb and chorus in order for it to sound nice, and that's something you just don't need to do with this card. This card really works. It works well, it sounds nice, and you have a very nice tool that we will see later where you can just configure if you want to use the Dream chip, or if you want to use a wavetable header, the external output. Yeah, it also has the crystal chip, the CS4232. And I'm not even sure if it has some legit OPL3 chip or not. Something I would have to research actually. Sorry, I never tried it, to be honest. Yeah, but there will be some sound samples later. I will enter some games where I just let the music play, so you can hear how this one sounds. Yeah, so these are the major components. For the memory, I'm just using 2 sticks of, I'm not even sure, I think this is EdoRAM, so this is not a problem with this board, as it is a late 486 board. You can use the Edo memory for this one. And for the hard drive, I'm going with this CF card here. I think this is even a 16 gig card, so this is way too big for the system, but luckily the BIOS accepts it. I must admit I do not have so many compact flash cards. I usually work with SD cards, but here I will use this compact flash card. Yeah, so that being said, one of the reasons why I chose this mainboard here is actually form factor, because I was thinking about what to do as an upgrade, because the original tweet for the build of said we should do some sort of upgrade, and I was really wondering like what kind of upgrade could I do to like a 30-year-old system or a 25-year-old system. So while I would consider the Matrox card as an upgrade already, it's not really an upgrade that has much of an impact. But there is something that I wanted to do for a long time, ever since I have seen a video from Phil's Computer Lab on this, and that is to put 486 into an ATX case. And I'm pretty sure there's some people that are screaming blasphemy right now, but yeah, it's something that I wanted to give a try, because why not? There are so many videos for classical machines and AT cases, which I do love as well, by the way, but I wanted to do something different, so this time I'm going to put the system into an ATX case. Alright, here we can see the case that I will be using. It's a Sharkoon case, it's the S25-W. It's actually a very nice case. It's not too expensive, but it's also not totally cheap. What I mean with that is it still feels solid. I mean, there's no noise dampening or anything inside, but it's not that kind of totally thin, like paper metal kind of cheap case. It's still solid, it's still working, and you can put a system in and out a couple of times without having the feeling of actually breaking the case. It has the usual connectors here on top, so for the audio and the USB, which obviously we're not going to connect. And here's the power button. And on the inside we have a couple of fans. So there is this fan here that is also blue, like, you know, everything needs to have color and lights nowadays. And there's two other fans right here on the corner. And yeah, the case is actually the reason why I was going for that mainboard, because these modern cases, while I like about modern cases that they are way better in terms of cable management than old cases, because you can just hide it always somewhere here behind the mainboard and you don't see it anymore. But you need to have a spot where it comes to the front, and this is usually here. And that's the reason why there is always something sticking out. And this is exactly like 1 centimeter too close to this area, which means a full size AT board will just not fit in here. This is why I went for the baby AT system, which is kind of a shame. I was still looking for something where I could get a full AT size mainboard in. Also for a socket 7, that would be interesting to have. I remember that the older ATX cases, I think there it was not an issue. If I remember the Chief Tech Dragon case that I have, that should not have an issue with something like this. But okay, this is what it is. Now, besides the form factor, there's one other obvious problem when you try to put in a 486 AT system into an ATX case, which is the power supply. Because, as we have seen, this is obviously not a button that goes in and out, so you cannot just turn on an AT power supply with that. And that's the part where I got interested in when I watched Phil's Computer Lab, because he has found a very, very nice solution for this that I will show in a minute. One second. So this is the idea that I borrowed from Phil's Computer Lab that I really like, because I'm totally into any kind of physical switches like this. And what he did was he added switches to this case. So I just bought one of those adapter frames here for the 5 1/4 inch slots, and I mounted the FTD drive, the floppy drive in here. And now I have 2 of those switches. One is for the turbo, and the other one is for the power. So if this is up, the turbo is on, and if it is down, the turbo is off. And the same goes for the power. If this is up, the system is turned on, and if this is down, the system is turned off. That's not something very hard to build. I mean, just drilled 2 holes in here with, I think, 4 millimeters in diameter, and then you have these cables here that you can just make this like a rudimentary connection, but you can use these two to plug it to the board on the turbo switch, and the other one goes to the power cable. I mean, this is not beautiful, I fully agree. It's just to, you know, have it insulated. One day I think I will put some of these tubes that get smaller when you make them hot around it, and make it a little bit more nice. But this should work actually, and I mean, there's not a lot of power going through, so even if the cable is thin, that's not an issue. The turbo is just to close a circuit. I mean, it's 5 volts, but I don't think there's like any real amps going through there, so that should not be an issue. And yeah, so I would say I will put this together, and then we will see how it works. Okay, so now I managed to get everything in the case, and it worked surprisingly well and was quite easy, because there are 4 screws actually matching, so one in that corner, one here, the one behind the CPU, and one in that corner. So the board sits quite well in the case. Also, as you can see, I was able to hide most of the cables in the back of the case, so that also looks quite nice and cleaned up. This case has 3 fans, and I connected 2 of them, so just this one here and this one over there. Reason for that is, I mean, they produce more airflow than that is required for the system, but I thought in case that eventually this CPU fan dies of old age, there's still enough airflow to prevent overheating of that system. Yeah, so that all works quite well. For the reason why I spend a bit of time on this cable management is, first of all, I'm by nature the kind of person that if there is a mess and I know that there is a mess, I want to clean it up. So even if I hide it, I still know it's there, and that doesn't work out for me. And the other one is, in this case actually, comes with a windowed blade. And I actually thought, I mean, I was never into case modding. I never overclocked. I was a pretty boring PC user. But I thought to myself, if I was building a system that had a window on the side, it would be nice for it to be a retro system so that you can actually see that you are using a 486 system and not a modern kind of system. So that is why I decided to give this one a try, and I'm actually quite happy with the results, as you can see soon. I also added some other device here on top. So this is a Yamaha MU80, and I like this device especially for playing Descent. I prefer the Yamaha sound over the Roland sound for that game. It's a matter of personal taste, but for me it's like that. And the way I'm connecting is, so I'm using the joystick output of the Soundcard to connect the MIDI in, and I will use a normal regular headphone cable to connect to the phone's output here, which goes then to the line in on the back of the Soundcard. We can see later in the mixer setting that it's quite easy then to switch between both of them, which is really nice. Also, in terms of input devices, I was very surprised, but I have this this Logitech keyboard here, which is a USB keyboard, but it still speaks PS2. I don't know if all USB keyboards are still doing that, but this one does, and it's an older one. So with this nice adapter chain here, I'm able to use that keyboard on this system. It's just to stay in the black theme of things here. And I even managed to find one of those old serial mouses, or a serial mouse here, that I still have. I didn't remember I had it, but it's actually still working. And so that makes like a really nice round black setup here. So I'm now going to put the shield on, the blade on the case, and then we can finally start turning everything on and do some benchmarks and play some games. So stay tuned. And here you can see the full setup. As you can see, also the buttons to switch the machine on are working perfectly. And yeah, just FYI, those lights, they're actually blue. I think the blue LEDs are somehow messing with the camera. Yeah, and here we can see the board description, so the Terminator 2 and the DX4 CPU at 100 MHz with 32 max of memory. Starting into DOS. This is, by the way, the sound card initialization that you have seen here, so that's how fast it goes. And now for the benchmarking. Starting with 3D Bench, which produces the same result, also with different cards, so I'm pretty sure this is just measuring the CPU power here. We reach 58.8. Landmark is rating the CPU at 521 MHz and the FPU at 720 MHz. It becomes interesting when we use the turbo button here and change the frequency, so then we end up with 290 MHz CPU and an FPU of roughly 400 MHz. So the turbo button is almost cutting the performance down by half, as we can see at least in this tool. And now we will switch it back and go to the next benchmark. And that is SpeedSys. Here we can see some interesting details when it comes to using the turbo button, or the turbo switch to be more precise. At the moment the system is rated at 38.8, and we can see for the memory that we have a throughput on the L1 cache of 53 megabyte per second. We have roughly 25 on the L2 and about 16 on the memory. Now if we switch the turbo switch and restart the tool, we will see some very different results. First of all, what we can see is that the CPU is now rated with 83 MHz, which sounds like just a minor drop in performance, but we can see on the memory that this throughput has actually dropped a lot. So while the L1 cache is still quite high with 35 MHz, when we look at the L2, it's down to 7.3, and the memory throughput is down to 4.9 megabyte per second. So that's quite a drop that is produced by the turbo switch. And also the memory bandwidth, it went down from 56 megabyte per second to 18 megabyte per second. So I never tried to play any CPU sensitive game with it. I would assume it's still too fast for anything like Wing Commander, but it's quite a difference in performance when we use the turbo switch actually. Now, what would a DOS system build be without testing if it can run Doom, right? So, as we can see, and as it was expected, Doom is running pretty decently on this system. In the end, we reached 2270 real ticks, although I must admit I still have no idea what this unit actually means. Just for the fun of it, I also gave Quake a chance to run on this system. I mean, I did not expect this to run perfectly fine or fast enough, but it's performing better than I expected actually. In the end, we reached 9.1 frames per second, which is actually more than I expected on this system. Now, before we start with the games, and as mentioned before, I wanted to show the mixer setting interface of the Teratic card. So you can see here, which is really nice, that you have an overview of all the different channels of the card, the inputs. There is the master on top that controls the main volume, and then you have the different channels for the synthesizer, the line-ins, the wavetable, and the daughter board. So that's why I said it's easy to switch between the external Yamaha device and the internal card. So for the next game, which is Descent, we're going to change the setting to mute the internal synthesizer and enable the external line in to use the Yamaha MU80 for the game. next one on the list is Doom, and for this I first will change the input back, so I will using the internal synthesizer of the sound card, and we will not be using the Yamaha. I will have some scenes in the game where I just stand around to listen to the music, as that's easier than when there is a lot of shooting going on. So I think that card sounds pretty nice, and it's actually quite close to a Roland device, and as mentioned, that is why I like it so much, because it's so easy to use and it still sounds so really good. Next on the list is Duke 3D, and let's have a look at that and how that sounds.
Let's rock. Damn, those alien bastards are gonna pay for shooting up my ride. Groovy. Let God sort him out.
And the last game on the list is the first part of Command & Conquer, which is still one of my favorite games, and one of the games that I played really a lot back in the day.
Neue Bauoptionen.
Jawohl, Sir.
Wird gebaut. Verstärkungen sind eingetroffen.
Jawohl, Sir. Kein Problem.
Konstruktion fertig. Neue Bauoptionen. Wird gebaut.
Jawohl, Sir.
Verstärkungen sind eingetroffen.
Jawohl, Sir. Kein Problem.
Unsere Basis wird angegriffen. Konstruktion
In
fertig.
Ordnung. Jawohl, Sir. Jawohl, Sir. Jawohl, ich auch. Jawohl, Sir. Jawohl, Sir.
So that's it for this build. Thanks for watching. If you had the patience to stick around so long, the video has become a lot longer than I expected it to be. Also sorry that it took so long to release it. There were just some other things that I had to take care of first, unfortunately. For the system itself, when I started building it, I was really like, yeah, okay, I put together 486, and I must admit I came to like the system a lot, and I'm pretty sure it will stick around with me for quite some time. And be my #1 gaming machine for DOS games for the next couple of months for sure. So, as said, thanks for watching and have a nice day. Bye bye.